Hello Year 8, my name is Mr Edwards. I'm Head of Business in school, and I'm going to take you through this presentation to hopefully give you a good idea about what taking GCSE Business would be like as an option. Now, as you can see, it was actually written by some previous Year 11s when they said what they would want to know if they were choosing the subject at the beginning, so hopefully you'll find it informative. If you choose GCSE Business, you will have the same number of lessons as you would have in other GCSE lessons. That's 4 a fortnight. So this isn't a BTEC, this is a straight GCSE. So you'll be taught either by myself or Mrs Hornblow, possibly Mr Brennan or Miss Hinchy or Mr Ponton. We have quite large numbers choosing the subject now, so we tend to have 4 groups in each year group. So the first question most people have is, what's GCSE Business about? So we look at the different types of businesses that are in the UK and the world, what affects them, how they affect other businesses, and what they actually do. Where do they get their resources from, their money, what do they do with it, and how they then go on to achieve success and how you measure that success. We look at how they employ people and how businesses are changing to the world. So for the next few slides, we'll give you a very brief overview of the sort of things you'll be looking at in GCSE Business, and we start with looking at entrepreneurs. So we look at why businesses are set up, who sets them up, and what's their motivation. So we look at many ways businesses are owned, from the smallest to the largest. One of the first tasks you'll do is to choose an entrepreneur and actually research their background. You'll find out why they started the business, when they started the business, what actually the business is, and how big it's become. So you will look at people such as Richard Branson, you'll look at Lord Sugar, but basically you will choose an entrepreneur that you're interested in and find out their story. Once you know how and why businesses are started, we then look at how they're owned. So in the UK, we look at the smallest form of business ownership first, which is what's known as a sole trader, which is one person setting up and running their business. And then we look at how businesses start to grow. So it could be setting up as a partnership or taking on extra partners. So we look at some of the reasons why people do that, and we look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of being in a partnership. So talking of how businesses grow, we look at a very common method used these days, and that's the franchise model, where one business, the franchisor, sells to another business, which is the franchisee, the right to operate their business, is their name, their logo, and their trading method. You might not realise, but many of the McDonald's, Burger Kings, Pizza Huts that you use are actually not run by the original company, the original founders, the Burger Kings, the McDonald's, the Pizza Huts. They're actually run by franchisees who've bought the right to operate those models. So we look at those types of businesses and why you would take on a franchise. We then move on to looking at the largest sort of businesses that you'll find in Britain, which are called public limited companies. So Sainsbury's PLCs, Barclays PLCs, you might have seen these 3 letters after their names. So we'll look at what that means. Ultimately what it means is that you can buy and sell shares, and when I say you, I mean members of the public. So this means that these businesses can raise huge amounts of money, and therefore that's the reason why they've grown to be so big and so successful. So once you know about the different ways the businesses can be owned and operated in the UK, we then look at their sources of finance, so where they raise their money for their day-to-day operations, but also money that they'll need to grow even further. And as part of that, you actually choose a PLC to invest in, so you will buy shares in the PLC and you'll track it over a 6-week period. Now, the money you'll use, it's virtual money, doesn't it? We don't actually give you the money, but you will have earned £1 for every point you've scored in the assessments that we would have done up to the course at this point. So, for example, if you scored 200 points in the tests and the assessments you would have done by this stage, you'll have £200 to buy shares in a company of your choice. So you'll track those then over a period of time, and it's a competition. So obviously the person who earns the most money, in other words makes the profit, their share price rises the most, they win the prize. Clearly, this is all going to be down to how good your research is and your choice of company to invest in. So you try to choose a business that you think is going to be successful over this period. Whilst you're tracking your share price changes, you will also produce a short report on what's been happening to your share price over the course of the period that we're looking at. And you'll present it in the form of a report, which will obviously help improve your numeracy skills, but also your communication skills. So in it, you'll present your results, you'll calculate your profit and loss, but you'll also do some analysis. You will explain why the share price of your company has risen or fallen. So you're getting a good indication of what goes on in the real world, and hopefully earning a profit as you do it. We split the course into 8 different units, and the third unit that we look at is how businesses use the resources at their disposal in the most efficient way, but also then where they choose to locate their businesses. So we look at why Google has chosen to locate their new headquarters in central London, and why a company such as Bosch, which used to have a factory on the western edge of Cardiff, why they closed down the factory there and relocated to a different part of Europe. So we look at where businesses choose to operate in countries, but also around the world. So when looking at how businesses produce the products and services that they do for us to use, we look at where those resources come from. So we look at what's called the primary sector. So where businesses get their raw materials and how they put them together in what's called the secondary sector, so in factories or construction. And then we look at the tertiary sector, which is where we buy those goods and services. So we look at what's been happening in those what we call sectors of the economy, and we look at how they're all linked together in something called the chain of production. So we try to make our lessons as applicable to the real world as possible and quite practical where we can. So for looking at the chain of production, we put you into small groups and you naturally form what's called a production line. And this then brings out concepts such as quality control or efficiency or productivity, teamwork and leadership skills. So all those things in business that are important. So we can see on this photo, here's some example of some previous students, and apologies about the age of the photo, but I quite like having an Olympic gold medalist and world champion in the photo. For our fourth unit, we move on to marketing. So we look at how businesses go about researching markets and deciding on the products that they produce, the price they sell them at, how they promote them, and the places that they sell them in. So we look at then the importance of branding. How do businesses create a brand image that we instantly recognise? So over the next few slides, I won't say anything. I'll just see if you can recognise some of the brands from a very small proportion of their logo and simple colours. See if you can recognise them. We also look at why some of these business brands can be around for years and decades, and why others might be only around for a very short period of time. So we look at what's called the product life cycle, and we look at why products these days actually have a shorter product life cycle on average than they have in times gone by. So we look at the impact of changing consumer tastes and the power of advertising, and especially the power of digital advertising. For our fifth unit, we move on to people and business, or what we used to call personnel, or these days is called human resource management. So we look at all aspects of the business and the way they manage their people, how they recruit them, how they select them, how you train your employees, what laws there are, and also how you pay people, which leads you on to thinking about, right, what motivates people in the workplace? How do you lead them? How do you motivate them to actually be the best they can in the business? So the psychology of this is quite often many students' favourite part of the course. We then move on to the sixth unit, which is finance and accounts. In this part of the course, you'll learn how to construct and also analyse various business documents such as cash flow forecasts, break-even charts, profit and loss accounts, and on those accounts you'll also do some what we call ratio analysis. You'll be able to do some calculations to work out how well the business is performing. Now, you will need some math skills, but as you know, businesses always use calculators, and so do we. So as long as your numeracy skills are pretty good, you shouldn't have too many problems accessing this part of the course. The next area we look at is production and production methods. So we look at how businesses produce individual handcrafted products right the way through then to mass-produced, mass-market, flow production type products. And we look at the use of technology and quality control in the production of those goods. We also look then at how businesses grow in terms of mergers and takeovers. So we look at businesses such as the American company Kraft and how and why they took over Cadbury. And we look at the reasons why they would do that. For our final unit, we look at what affects businesses, so the external environment, so the impact of things like government, the impact of consumer behaviour, the impact of exchange rates, the impact of the economy. So how businesses have to respond to the various challenges they would face from those sorts of areas. Now, particularly then during this part of the course, since we're in year 11 and we're starting to gear up for exams, this unit and the last few, to be honest, there's a real focus on exam questions, getting you ready to do well in the GCSE exams. So a common question is, what will I be doing in lessons? And the answer is much the same as you'd be doing in other GCSE subjects. You'll be learning and working. So whilst some parts of the course you will find more interesting, some you'll find more difficult, we will try to break every lesson up into different parts. So we will do some explanations, we'll do some activities, we'll watch some videos, but above all we'll try to make it as relevant as possible to businesses and what they're doing in the real world today. So as I say, we look at case studies, we quite often do some business games, some taste tests, we produce some adverts, some posters. So we try to do all sorts of activities that hopefully you'll find interesting and also help you learn about business behaviour in the modern world. Another question we quite often get asked is, do we go on any trips or visits? And to be honest, we don't tend to go out as much as we used to because we got the internet and cameras in school, so we can see real business activities in the classroom much better than we ever could before. But we do still sometimes go to Cadbury's World to look at their marketing and production activities. People often ask about tests, and yes, we do a lot of tests. We do one at the end of each of the units, so we have an end of unit test. That gives us an idea of how you're progressing. We also then tend to do an end of year exam at the end of year 9, the end of year 10, and obviously a mock exam then in December in preparation for your year 11 exams. So there will be also little tests in between, but the idea of it all really is to help you make good progress and to help you see how you're doing. There is no coursework anymore in GCSE Business. There used to be, but not anymore. There are now just 2 exams at the end of the course. And at the end of year 11, once you finish the course, there are 2 exams. So there are no exams in year 10, there are just 2 exams at the end of year 11. So one of those exams is 2 hours long and the other one is an hour and a half long. So the first exam is shorter questions and the second exam is based on a case study of a business, so a real business that you'll have to answer questions about. So what do people do once they've done GCSE Business? Well, we get quite a lot of our students come through to the sixth form with us and they carry on with A-level business, or they also do economics, and I'll tell you more about those when you're in year 11, when you're thinking about A-level choices. Equally, if you don't decide to carry on with A-levels, doing GCSE Business is really good for preparation for any other course that you might choose to do, but obviously it's going to be an excellent foundation for going into the world of work. So hopefully this has answered quite a few of the questions you might have about choosing the course, but if you have got any other questions, feel free to drop in to see me in room 54, it's in the new block, or Mrs. Hornblow, who teaches in room 52. So as I said at the beginning, this presentation was actually put together by some previous students, so when they were in year 11. So those students, here are some of the comments that they made that they thought might be useful advice for you when talking about the experiences they had of when they did GCSE Business. So I won't read through them, I'll just leave the slide on. You can just briefly read through a few of their comments. So I hope the presentation has answered some of the questions you might have about choosing GCSE Business, and I hope it's helped you make the right decision about your GCSE options. So thanks for listening. Bye bye.